Good morning again. I think we can get us started. Thank you very much for attending this. It's going to be a fantastic webinar and SMAP webinar focused on clean hydrogen transportation on road transport. And we have a number of colleagues and partners still connecting, but we have given 5 minutes after 9 a.m. in DC, so let's get it started. This morning we have the pleasure to have a presenter, Wenxing Chao, from she's a senior transport specialist and global lead for technology and innovation knowledge group at the World Bank. And she will deliver the presentation this morning. My colleague, Michelle Harak, Senior NE Specialist at SMAP, will deliver the opening remarks as well as the closing remarks. So Michelle is part of the green hydrogen, the hydrogen group at the bank, and she also not very far away. She led the efforts at the Inter-American Development Bank as well on hydrogen. So we have a number of, as I said, colleagues and partners. So the structure basically is initial 5 minutes remarks from Michelle, then presentation from Wenxing, about 30-35 minutes. We can hold on for questions. Most of the questions, the quick Q&A, we will have time enough. So we have a schedule even 90 minutes for this webinar. And let's see if we can have a very nice and lively discussion. And also in the Q&A, may I suggest other organizations, institutions, individuals with experience in similar initiatives, projects, analysis, and so on. They are very welcome to also. I can give them the floor, and they can practically share the views and experience on top of questions for Wenxing. And during her presentation, you can, if there is any burning question about some, statistics or some data on the slides or some comments, I think she will be open to answer those questions, keeping most of them for the Q&A session. And that's I didn't want to say much more right now, so let me please give the floor to my colleague Michelle, the opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Good morning, good afternoon, and even to our guests, colleagues, and partners. It's my pleasure to give this open remark today of the presentation of this new report, the Clean Hydrogen for Road Transportation Developing Countries. The study comes as a pivotal time because the countries worldwide are looking on the effort of decarbonization, transition, resilience, but also right now this big discussion of considering efficiency, value chain development, and job creation. So this allows us to think not just on the climate, but on the economic and development impacts that we are looking at. And when you think about climate and change on CO2 emissions and all these things, we know that the transport accounts for about 22% of those emissions, right? So there is, and the demand is still rising. So there is no way to think about transition to a sustainable economic, environmental enabling conditions without the decarbonization of the transport sector. So that's really central in the discussion. And if it's true that the battery of electrical vehicles is still leading many markets, including passenger markets on this and others with light transportation, hydrogen is still emerging technology on that sense and can be very complementary in the pathway, especially considering the hard to abate sectors. So which includes heavy duty, long haul transportation, where the batteries operation is kind of more limited. So that's where I think this report brings a lot of on that discussion. And when you think about that, we need to think about scale and the broader combination of demand and supply conditions. And when you think about demand, it's important to look not just that this demand is part of a larger demand, and that can be allowed the scale of economy that we're looking at. So that these conditions, these special conditions is really important when you think about viability for some of these projects, right? So we're always trying to think where this demand can happen and how to combine with other demands to make these projects viable. And the report provides one of the most comprehensive analyses on hydrogen role on road transportation in developing countries. That's where we're looking at when you think about development. That's our main clients and goal. And it model 5 diverse contexts. It includes Brazil, it includes Chile, India, South Africa, and Korea. And it compares with other technologies, which it's really an important element when you think about different paths and complementarity for pathways. As expected, the finds are very nuanced, right? It's not something dual yes or no. And we will let the presentation to talk more about these nuances and details, but we'd just like to underline and provoke the discussion on what are those niche opportunities that countries that we're working with can develop. And on this niche mark, on these valleys, on this bunch of demand, how transportation, especially heavy truck transportation, can be part of it. So when you think about trucks and also buses, that's another part where policies usually it's much easier, especially when you think about density populated countries and where externality is so important, considering environmental, but also health. It's an important element. So here I also want to underline the role of clean air and this kind of policies beyond the emissions, the CO2 emissions, and how we can actually the revenue or the added value may make this economic sense compared with all the costs that will be discussed afterwards. So when you talk about hydrogen value chain, it goes beyond transportation, especially when you talk about renewable energy, the clean hydrogen, it's opportunity for economic diversification, job creation, energy security, especially because it combines with renewable. And as you know, solar has been one of the biggest job creation on energy in the last years. So that's kind of combination that also can lead to development. So the report, it's really focused on developing countries strategically and how they can strategically include hydrogen on mobility. It means not just clean hydrogen for mobility, but how it can be part of a bigger strategy, especially when you can combine this demand, you can create this synergy and improve the economies and the feasibility of this project. The path for forward requires a balanced and data-driven and country-specific approach. Or not here, I guess, to propose anything too general as we'll be presenting the report, but I will invite us all to engage on that and keep thinking with the presentation. Thank you very much for this and looking forward to discussing ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. This super nice opening remarks. Will now allow Wenxin to make the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, Michelle, for this great opening. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I appreciate the invitation from SMAP, and also thank you, Ignacio, for the coordination. Here today, I'm presenting our report finding from a recent publication of clean hydrogen in the road transportation in developing countries. This research has been supported by SMAP, And we're much appreciating the support and the close advice we received from the hydrogen lead in SMAP, Dorf, our colleague. He has been quite generous and been giving us very close advice along the way to help us shape up the final finding of the report. For that, we're very much appreciated. And I also see some familiar faces from our transport colleagues and also from IFC. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. So without further ado, let me share my presentation that we will use this precious morning time to discuss about the economics of clean hydrogen mobility for road transportation. So this research is motivated by another earlier research that we have launched at the transport group. It's on the discussion around the economics of electric mobility for road transportation, especially in the lower and middle income countries. So we have launched the other early study during COP27, and after that, we want to compare the economics of the clean hydrogen in road transportation vs the electric mobility, and of course against their ICE counterparts. So that's when we launched this report earlier in March this year, and I'm going to discuss what's our result findings. Okay, to start with, clean hydrogen is an essential component for green energy transition. This is an alternative to the fossil fuel, which has been heavily used in the transport sector to power our vehicles. But hydrogen has zero or low emission from both production and also on the tailpipe if it's being produced clean. It can help enhance energy security by reducing the reliance on imported fossil fuels. It helped to improve local air quality by reducing the NOx, sulfurs, and particle matters. Decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors in industry and the chemical and also in transport sector. And it can help to drive economic growth and job creation, like Michelle just talked about, for countries with abundant renewable energy resources through the green hydrogen production. And for those that is abundant with natural gas reserves, they can also be helpful for the blue hydrogen production, which is also a clean hydrogen production. So globally, there is more than 30 countries announced their commitment to the clean hydrogen development. If we take a look at this map from IEA, this is the currently operational and announced project that produce low emission hydrogen from concept stage to operation. The green color ones is produced from renewable, and the blue hydrogen from natural gas, and the orange ones more from biomass and other methods. Now let's remove those that's from concept stage and only include the project that is already receiving the final investment decision to operation, also is still sourced by the IEA project. We see that the green hydrogen production is highly concentrated in Europe, and also in China, India, in LAC area along the shore, and also in the US. So in this study, we have selected 5 countries for a case study to study the economic viability of clean hydrogen in the road sector, including India, Brazil, Chile, South Korea, and also South Africa. So look at the hydrogen use in transport sector. It has already been applied in shipping sector for short sea shipping and ferries, replacing the traditional bunker fuels. We have transport colleague who has already been publishing several reports regarding the hydrogen use in shipping sector. And also in aviation for short haul flights and as a feedstock for the sustainable aviation fuel. In the rail sector, it has been applied to use as a non-electrified rail networks in China and in Europe. In the road sector, the hydrogen consumption demand has been a fraction compared with other sectors, but it has been increasing largely. 60 kilotons demand in 2023, which is an increase of 55% over the previous year, but remain a small fraction. And this demand is driven mainly by the heavy-duty trucks and the bus uses of hydrogen. So if we look at the fuel cell electric vehicles, which is FCEVs powered by the hydrogen, they use onboard fuel cell stacks that convert hydrogen to electricity to power the vehicle motors. By 2024, the global stock of FCEVs is at 93,000, but this is compared to a much larger amount of 40 million battery electric vehicles on the road. And this is a composition of the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, mostly by cars, trucks, bus, and some vans recently. And the application deployment is mostly concentrated in Korea, China, US, Japan, Europe. Those countries are driving larger demand. And looking at the global stock of the hydrogen refueling station, it increased in 2023, and this increase is mainly by growth in China and Europe. It has been growing steadily, although several hydrogen refueling stations has been closed out in the last year, but still the total is an increase. So coming back to our study, what motivated us is that we want to understand, is hydrogen vehicles a relevant solution for the developing countries? First, the first thing comes into mind is that the hydrogen powered vehicle, we call FCEVs, they're quite expensive. The upfront cost is not quite affordable. Do they still make economic sense for developing countries to consider adopting them? And if so, what vehicle segment, what categories of FCEV is the most relevant, will be the most easy entry point for the developing countries, whether that will be cars or bus or light pickups or heavy duty vehicles. And does this FCEV hydrogen mobility make environmental sense? If we're not using the green hydrogen, which is purely from renewable, what if we're using blue hydrogen that is from natural gas? Do they still make environmental sense in terms of CO2 emission reduction and also local air quality improvement? And how important, if you compare with the local air quality improvement environmental benefit against the global one, which is for the decarbonization purposes? And in the end, what is the investment need from both public sector and private sector if we choose to adopt FCEVs as one of the mobility solutions? So with these important policy questions in mind, we have conducted this study financed by the SMAP program to learn the economic case of zero-emission vehicles, including both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell hydrogen-powered vehicles, and which is depending on various country-specific factors for the 5 countries, because each country have their own specific energy sources and their price, the fleet composition, whether it's car-dominated or public transit-dominated, the vehicle price in each country, and how they value the environmental benefit from the local air pollutant reduction and CO2 reduction. So for the first time, we undertake this detailed economic analysis of the adoption of FCEVs across the major both passenger and freight vehicle segment in 5 countries: Brazil, Chile, India, South Africa, and Korea. And this is based on a scoping tool that is developed in-house. We compare 2 policy scenarios to check the economic advantage. The first one is business as usual, where the internal combustion engine with the traditional ICE cars dominated the projection, against a 30 by 30 policy scenario, which means by the year 2030, 30% of the new sales of the vehicle will be either hydrogen powered or electric vehicle cars. And compare these 2 policy scenarios to see what if it's a cost advantage or cost disadvantage for the adoption. And we compare these 3 types of powertrains: internal combustion engine, which is the traditional petrol diesel cars, the battery electric vehicle, purely battery powered, fuel cell electric vehicle, which is powered by hydrogen through an electric motor. We compare these 3 types of powertrains across 4 vehicle segments, including cars, light commercial vehicle, the pickups, buses, and the long-haul heavy-duty trucks, HDVs. The key cost component that we covered in the analysis is by vehicle capital cost, the upfront pay, the fuel cost, whether it's petrol, diesel, or electricity cost, or the hydrogen fuel cost, the maintenance of the vehicle cost, refueling infrastructure for hydrogen vehicles or charging infrastructure for the battery vehicles, and environmental cost from both CO2 emission reduction and local air pollutant reduction, which we include the nitrogen oxide, NOx, sulfur oxide, the SOx, and also particle matter 2.5. And this is considered over the entire vehicle lifetime and under different policy scenarios. So if you have to step away, I want to bring the last slide up front to present to you the highlight from the research findings before I go to a more deep dive. So the key cost drivers for this analysis will be the vehicle capital cost, the fuel cost, and environmental benefit. The thing we find is that the FCEVs currently is facing high vehicle cost, and both from the expensive hydrogen fuel and also the elevated vehicle capital cost upfront pay. The second finding is that the hydrogen buses and the heavy-duty vehicles trucks, these two segments could emerge as a viable clean fuel alternative compared with ICE diesel vehicles by year 2030 in densely populated countries like India, Korea, where they have higher environmental benefits that can offset the cost disadvantage from the vehicle upfront pay and the fuel cost. The third finding is that if we compare with the battery electric vehicle BEVs will outperform FCEVs economically in all vehicle segments across all country studies. The last finding is that FCEVs, they have some operational advantages that is not captured in the economic analysis, but they can enable their viable use in some niche market, especially for bus and heavy-duty vehicles. Now I'm going to have a breakdown analysis for each of the cost component to support our findings. The first, I want to talk about the vehicle capital cost. The FCEV's capital cost premium is substantial, but the price is gradually declining, and it's declining continuously over the year because of the technology advancement and its scale of economy. But through this decrease, the BEVs will always have a lower capital cost compared with FCEVs up until 2040. For buses and heavy-duty vehicles, currently there is still very high vehicle capital cost premium. It's about 3 times more expensive, and this projection will go down to 2 times beyond 2030. And this graph shows a projection of the vehicle price for different segments, comparing the FCEVs and the BEV vehicle types. Now let's look at the vehicle fuel cost. Clean hydrogen as a fuel is expensive compared with fossil fuel, petrol, diesel, and electricity per unit of energy basis. With the 5-country study, we find it on average, the hydrogen is about 4 times more expensive compared with fossil fuel and 2 times more expensive compared with electricity. So electricity is about twice as expensive compared with fossil fuel on this per unit of energy basis. Is because hydrogen and electricity they're more expensive because they're processed form of energy. And hydrogen can be even more expensive than electricity because the electrolysis and compression, liquefaction, and refueling process, they all use electricity power. So this high hydrogen cost will require a very rapid and significant drop through technology advancement and economy of scale for the FCEV to become economically viable. Look across all these countries, compare with this orange and yellow bar of petrol and diesel cost. Electricity is almost double the price, the blue bar, and compare with this blue hydrogen and the green hydrogen from purely renewable energy, they're about 4 times more expensive. So because we have converted this to the US dollar per gigajoule, per unit of energy, so that's a very straightforward comparison of using of different type of energy to power the vehicles. Now, let's take a look at from the vehicle's energy efficiency perspective, which if we're not just concentrated on the energy itself, the fuel cost itself, and when the fuel is into the vehicle, combined with the vehicle efficiency itself. From this perspective, the FCEVs are more energy efficient compared with ICEs, because ICEs will have about 80% of heat loss from the energy source. So that means only about 20% of the energy will be used to power the wheels of the ICEs. But comparing with the battery electric vehicles, they're less efficient. So the BEVs has the most energy efficiency, because for FCEVs, there will still be certain amount of energy loss by converting hydrogen to electricity to power the motor, and BEV will skip that part. And if we combine with this vehicle energy efficiency use, the FCEV clean fuel cost can be 4 times higher than ICEs, but 8 times higher than BEVs, because BEVs have the most energy efficiencies. About 90% of the energy from the electricity will be used to power the wheel. There will only be 10% of energy loss compare against 80% to the ICE cars. So this bar graph shows the energy consumption per kilometer traveled basis. That is how much joule will be needed for the vehicle to travel 1 kilometer, and comparing against the different power engines. For example, for bus, you see for the ICE bus, diesel bus, it will consume more energy compared with the electric bus. And the hydrogen bus will consume more, also comparing with electricity, but it is more efficient compared with the diesel bus. Now, if we combine with the cost, the fuel cost itself, and transfer to the dollar cost per vehicle kilometer traveled, this is a very apple-to-apple comparison. If we look at the bus sector, the ICE bus will take about 30 cents to travel 1 kilometer. And for the electric bus, it takes less, but the fuel cell electric bus will cost much more. And this is mainly because the hydrogen fuel cost is quite high. Based on our estimation, by 2030, the clean hydrogen cost will still be up to $12 per kilogram. So FCEs can be twice expensive than ICEs and up to 4 times more expensive than battery electric vehicles if we look at travel per kilometer travel basis. Next, let's look at the total cost of ownership. So the TCO is a perspective from user's side. That means if I own this vehicle for the whole lifetime, how much it will cost me comparing across the different powertrains. So this TCO cost is in financial terms, and we compare for each segment, and we find that FCEV TCOs will remain higher compared with ICE and BEVs by 2030. It is still more expensive, but if you compare, for example, look at the HDVs segment here. If we compare with the group of 2023 for ICE, electric BEV, FCEVs, and comparing with the group for 2030, the price difference, the gap, is narrowing down, both for BEV and for the FCEVs. Currently, the diesel trucks will be much cheaper compared with battery truck and the hydrogen trucks, but this price gap will narrow down due to the technology advancement, the continuous dropping of the battery price, and also the technology improvement in the fuel cell stacks. So based on that projection, this gap is narrowing down, but still it is more expensive to own this. So let me mention that TCO cost analysis will compose 5 segments, including the vehicle capital cost, the blue component, the net present value of the fuel cost over the entire vehicle lifetime, the orange bar, which we see that hydrogen fuel cost is really high here. The maintenance cost of owning the vehicle, and also the battery change cost, like every 8 or 10 years you need to change your battery, and also the charging infrastructure cost. If you need to install a charger for that, and you need to have charging stations for the buses, and also refueling station for the HDVs. So this is the finding from the TCO analysis. With that, fuel cell electric vehicle is not taking an obvious advantage on this sector. Next, let's look at the environmental benefit, which is quite important in this analysis because the zero-emission vehicles, both for battery vehicle and fuel cell vehicles, they both have zero emission from their tailpipe on the road, CO2-wise. And if we look at the production, either the power generation for electricity or the fuel generation from the hydrogen, if we're using the green renewable resources to generate green hydrogen, then there is no emission. And if we're using natural gas coupled with the carbon capture and storage technologies for the blue hydrogen, there will still be very low emission. So emission-wise, the zero-emission vehicles for both electricity and for the hydrogen fuel cell is both reducing the emission. If we compare the carbon intensity in the unit of kilogram of CO2 emitted per 100 vehicle kilometers traveled, in this unit, comparing between diesel, BEV, and blue hydrogen, because green hydrogen will be zero emission, we can see that the blue hydrogen powered vehicles emit the least CO2s in all countries across both sectors. But I want to put a note that the higher emission compared with the FCEVs from the battery is because in these countries, the power grid itself currently is not using renewables. They might be using coals or natural gas or other fossil fuels that because during the production of the electric powers, there is emission. And blue hydrogen is because it coupled with the carbon capture and storage, the emission is quite reduced. So that means if a country is shifting its power grid towards more renewables, then the gap between the FCEV and the BEV in terms of CO2 emission will narrow down. Now let's look at the local air pollutant, which we consider PM2.5, the NOx, and the SOx, which is the 3 most important air pollutants from the tailpipe, and also during the power generation process. So for the BEV and the FCEVs, the local air pollutant is mainly from the energy production process instead of on the road. On the road, the production is coming mostly from the tires, the tear and wear from tires, which is the minimum. So if we compare the amount of PM2.5 per 100 vehicle kilometer traveled, we can see that the ICE vehicle, the diesels, are quite high. And for both BEVs and blue hydrogen vehicles, they're about half in terms of producing the particle matter 2.5s. And if we're using green ones, it's a quarter of it. But there's still particle matters because there is tires or wear and tear on the road. So I want to emphasize that the BEVs have higher carbon intensity compared with FCEVs, but that is when the power grid is mostly from fossil fuels. If the power grid shifts to more renewable energy sources, this gap will narrow down. And Brazil is an excellent case that you can see that because they use quite a large amount of renewable energies for their power generation, so their emission is quite low. Now, if we combine the vehicle capital cost, the fuel cost, and also together with the environmental benefits, and aggregate all the cost components together to see whether it's a cost advantage or disadvantage, we find that the environmental benefit can outweigh the cost premium in some cases in the bus and the heavy-duty truck sector in favor of the FCEVs compared with ICE diesel vehicles. FCEVs will reduce local air pollutants, and there is significant benefits in countries with densely populated urban areas, such like India and South Korea, where the economic value of air quality improvement will be substantial, and is so substantial that they can outweigh the cost premiums. If we look at India, South Korea, we can see that the environmental benefits from both air quality improvement and CO2 emission is quite high. And FCEVs, they will show cost advantage in the bus and heavy-duty truck sector in India. But BEVs will still outperform FCEVs economically across all vehicle segments. And this compares between the green FCEVs economic cost together with the blue bar is representing the BEV economic cost. We can see that for all segments, the blue bar representing the BEV is outperforming the green ones, which represent the FCEVs. So FCEVs only show their economic viability in the bus and HDV sector, and this is comparing with the diesel counterparts. So in countries like India and South Korea, where they have very heavily densely populated urban areas, the economic value of air quality improvement will be substantial. So the environmental benefit of FCEV will outweigh their cost premium by a factor of 2 to 5 times, and making FCEV bus and the heavy-duty trucks economically viable compared to ICEs. The carbon financing strategies, together with other tools that can monetize the environmental externalities associated with in the transport sector, can be an effective policy lever for the deployment of FCEVs. Now, outside the pure economic analysis, there is some operational advantage from FCEVs that we cannot capture them in the economic analysis, but this operational advantage can make them quite competitive in certain niche market. So these advantages include FCEVs compared with BEVs. They have a longer driving range. Typically, hydrogen-powered FCEVs will have a 300 to 350 miles of travel capacity, compared with 175 to 200 miles for BEV buses. And this is due to the hydrogen vehicle's higher energy density per unit of weight. At the same time, they have faster refueling time. FCEVs can usually be refueled in just 5 to 15 minutes, most likely comparing to a diesel truck. This is in comparison to several hours of BEV charging time. So this will be more suitable for operations that require minimum downtime. For example, if we're working on the port with a forklift that need a faster refueling, they will require a very minimum downtime. Then hydrogen-powered vehicles will be more appropriate. But we also want to acknowledge that the charging time for the battery electric vehicle is also improving quite a lot. In some cases, under some very advanced technology, they can also be charged within 30 minutes or 15 minutes, but the majority is still requiring a longer charging time, and for buses, it might be overnight. The third point I want to make is that the FCEVs, they have a lighter weight, and that will give them a higher payload. The hydrogen storage tank, they're generally lighter, about 2 tons lighter, compared with the same size of to the heavy-duty trucks powered by electricity, because they have to carry a very large battery pack that is quite heavy. So the FCEVs have a higher cargo payload, and they will help to reduce the road wear and tear at the same time. So FCEVs can be a viable alternative in some niche market where BEVs is facing limitations. So the first scenario might be in the hilly region, mountain with a lot of mountainous. Then the FCEVs can sustain their peak power output over a longer distance traveled, but BEVs might experience some significant range loss on the very steep grade. And there has been a case proved in California where they have to travel across a mountain for their regular bus route, and they have doing a pilot testing of both hydrogen buses and the electric buses, where hydrogen buses can complete the up the hill to the other side and coming back, while the performance from the battery buses less satisfying. The second scenario is under the cold weather. The cold weather will have impacts on the battery electric vehicles more severely. There has been some testing and experiments saying that the range reduction can be up to 37.8% in the temperature between 22 to 32 degree, compared with the 23% for the hydrogen-powered fuel cell vehicles. The other case is for the logistics sector and for some high utilized fleet operations, they will require continued, like the forklifts in the port sector, excuse me, requiring continuous long hours of operation with minimum downtime. And for that case, hydrogen-powered vehicle might find its niche market. Now, here comes the question. With all the previous analysis and with the finding and with the numbers that we see, what is our conclusion for the uptake of the FCEVs for their economic viability? And if they're viable, what is their entry market and the investment need? So we find that currently, with the current market trends and price, the FCEVs does not present an economic case in most vehicle segments. They have started to show some cost advantage in bus and heavy-duty trucks in countries with densely populated urban areas like India and Korea. And this advantage is driven by the significant environmental benefit, and this could be the entry segment for the investment in the fuel cell electric vehicles. But at the same time, FCEVs cannot compete with battery electric vehicles due to their competitive vehicle capital costs from the BEVs and lower electricity costs to power the BEVs. So the investment need, we also compared that the investment need for BEV adoption is generally less than that is required for FCEV adoptions. These two pie charts represent the investment need for a 30 by 30 scenario in Brazil by year 2030. If you're considering to adopt the green hydrogen FCEVs against the adoption of battery electric vehicles in Brazil, we can see that the total additional cost for year 2030 to adopt the FCEVs will be about 31,000 million in Brazil. And for the battery electric vehicles, for that transition will cost almost half at 18,000 million for additional cost advantage. And this investment need we calculated include both for the public procurement of buses, the charging infrastructure that is needed, and also from the private sector for the incremental additional need for the vehicle capital cost compared with ICEs, and also for the private charging infrastructure cost. So this significant investment for FCEV adoption is mainly from the vehicle capital cost and their very expensive refueling station costs. It costs about $2 million for each refueling stations for the fuel cell electric vehicles. So this the investment need from public sector could be very huge to purchase buses and also to install the charging and refueling infrastructures. However, the investment need for BEV adoption is generally much less compared with FCEVs based on the current market conditions. So with this analysis, we have come to the several recommendations for the use of clean hydrogen in the transport road sector. So we would encourage to promote a clean hydrogen economy for the energy security and job creation purposes, which they have proven their relevancy. But we need to integrate the clean hydrogen pilot project into the green energy transition and prioritizing the hard-to-abate sectors. There are industry sectors, they have very limited alternatives to decarbonize that sector. While in the transport sector, we do have a competing technology, which is the battery electric vehicles that is currently proving to be more economically viable. And if we're considering the FCEV deployment, it should be targeted in the higher impact niche market, which is driven by its operational advantage that we just talked about, which is, for example, in the very hilly regions, cold regions with cold temperature, and for the heavy duty and continuous operation requiring minimum downtime transport sectors. And we want to develop an enabling policy and regulation framework for the clean hydrogen economy to ensure the clean hydrogen production is aligned with a clean electricity generation. This will be to avoid unintended increase in the carbon intensity. That is, for example, it will not be encouraged to use the electricity to generate hydrogen if the electricity power grid is based on dirty fossil fuels. And rationalize the fiscal policies. Large-scale subsidies may not be feasible for many countries. The fiscal incentives should be designed to support the long-term cost reduction rather than artificially bridging the economic gap between FCEV and BEVs. And clear emission standards should be established and incentivized for the zero-emission vehicles. So with that, we need to adopt a coherent strategy for the hydrogen mobility for the green energy transition process. And before any investment, we would highly recommend to conduct a country-specific economic analysis to evaluate either the hydrogen mobility or electric mobility to guide their investment and to guide with the policy decisions. So within our transport global unit, we have developed this zero-emission vehicle scoping tool that we can quantify both economic and financial cost benefit for transition either to battery electric vehicle or to hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. With the policy scenario comparison, we can come to the conclusion if any vehicle segment is making economic or financial case for their adoption, and we welcome you to reach out to us, and we're happy to cross-support and help you with some analytical economic assessment for the ZEV zero-emission transition to promote the green energy transition in the transport sector, in the road sector. So with that, let me conclude my presentation for today. Like many transitions, the trajectory is uncertain, but the ultimate destination is quite clear. Thank you very much for your attention and for your time, and I will stop here for any questions. Over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Wenxin. I believe we will go now. We'll have probably about 25 minutes for Q&A. And then Michelle will deliver the closing remarks at the end. But excellent. Thank you very much, Wenxin, for such amazing insights about hydrogen and the road transport and some deep analysis about it. We have already started. Some colleagues started already in the chat with some questions. I think I would like to start giving the floor to these colleagues and respecting the order. Our colleague Govinda yeah, had a couple of questions, and I think I told him to hold on a bit for the presentation, because actually one of your last slides, I think, were clarifying part of his questions. But yeah, let's start with Govinda. Thank you so much.
Wenjin, thank you very much, and congratulations for the outstanding study. This is very interesting, very informative, and very useful also. I didn't know about it before, and thank you for organizing this webinar. You know, we came to know about this study, very helpful. You know, if I knew about it before, I could have contributed some of the issues. But anyway, because I work quite a lot on the economics of renewable energy. I'm from DEC RG, so several papers already published in this area, including hydrogen. I have a few questions. These might be, clarification questions. The first question is that, what is the basis for the cost projection? Because you have done the analysis for 2030. The second question is that, so what is the advantage of FCEV on top of BEV in the case of green hydrogen, because the source is green hydrogen? The same question, in the case of blue hydrogen, why not CNG, which is commercially available technology, instead of FCEV in the case of blue hydrogen? And my last question is that, what is the additional environmental benefits of FCEV as compared to BEV? Thank you very much. Sorry for asking too many questions.
I'm taking notes. Thank you very much for raising this question. They're quite relevant. Very good question. Thank you, Govindan. So let me try to explain them one by one. For the cost projection, we have projected both the vehicle cost and also the fuel cost. For the vehicle cost, we're referencing to the ICCT data. They have been projecting the trends of the battery technology and also the fuel cell technology, and they have a projection with the vehicle price, and we're in line with that. So basically, for the battery vehicles, the battery pack price has been dropping, which is quite consistent with the current market data. So we're using an average like 7 to 9% of annual drops for the battery pack price. That is the main cost drive for bringing the BEVs price down, and also similar for the FCEVs. So we're in line with ICCT, and then we adjusted this global price with country-specific index, which is mainly based on the purchasing power index for each country. And I believe the PVP power index, it has been published by our IMF colleagues. So basically, that's on the vehicle cost projection. And also, for the fuel cost projection, we have developed our own projecting model. This is based on the industry data that we have collected through our expertise colleagues over the countries, and we have been in consultation also with Carlos is here for Brazil, for the select countries, and also with our Indian colleagues, country colleagues providing some data. But basically, this price is based on analyzing the energy, both for the power grid and for producing, either it's producing green hydrogen or blue hydrogen based on its existing energy source. If currently the blue hydrogen is from natural gas with carbon capture storage, that has a relatively lower cost for production. And for the green ones, mostly, for example, in Brazil and in Chile, and they have an abundance of renewable energies from solar, wind. But for the green renewable energy production for the hydrogen cell is currently still relatively more expensive. And my colleague Carlos here, I think he just answered the question from Michelle asking about Brazilians. He's an expert on this one. He just answered that in the chat box. So we use the energy composition together with the current price, and also benchmarking with the market price, because currently we're seeing the hydrogen pump price. The pump price in Japan, in Korea is at $8 to $9. In Germany, around $15 to $17 per kilogram. California have a more fluctuating price that can go up to $30, but that might be policy influenced more, and also the price from China. So with a lot of factors, we have to balance and make the projection. So that's how we come up with the number. So after our own modeling effort to produce the hydrogen fuel and price, we're also benchmarking with estimation from IEA's recent hydrogen outlook report, and it's quite in line and consistent with that price they're estimating. So that is on the cost projection. So the second question, I believe, is on the advantage of FCEVs over BEV in terms of using green hydrogen. So FCEV is presenting to show some advantage only if they're using green hydrogen to power their vehicles because of the large environmental benefit. Because if green hydrogen is used, then there's zero CO2 emission, both from on the road and also during the production. But they're coming at a higher fuel cost compared with BEV. But so environmental benefit is an advantage, but the priority is that if they're using a clean hydrogen to power it, if they're using a green hydrogen using fossil fuel, then this advantage will diminish compared with BEVs. But the other prerequisite is that the BEVs is using the power grid, and most country has not transitioned its power grid completely to renewable, but is during that process. So that's why where Brazil is showing its advantage because it's using more renewable energies. So as your power grid shifts to more renewables, then the environmental benefit between FCEVs using green hydrogen compared with BEVs also using green power, the gap will diminish. The third one is about CNG. Alternative powertrain, and we made decision not to include that. It's mainly because CNG is still using natural gas. Natural gas is compared with fossil oil, coal is cleaner, but it does not make that significant environmental benefit. And because the CNG buses, for example, is not having a sufficient energy efficiency from its engine compared with battery ones. So we did not include this intermediate type of powertrain analysis because we want to also try to avoid this technology in battery and FCEVs has been advancing so fast and price has been continuously dropping. And if we advise the CNG bus procurement, then it might become a stranded asset in the very recent future. So we did not include that in our analysis because we can see the more obvious advantage from the engine efficiency, the fuel efficiency, and also technology advancements in the battery electric vehicle and the fuel cell electric vehicles. So the last question is on the external benefit of FCEVs. That I think is regarding to the environmental one. So that is where the largest advantage of FCEVs. We have proven that the green hydrogen can eliminate CO2 emission, and it can also dramatically reduce the air pollutant, leaving very few ones that is both mainly from the tire wear and tear. So this is the main advantage from fuel cell electric vehicles if they're using green hydrogen to power the vehicles. So then the priority is that if we can bring down the green hydrogen's production cost, the FCEV will have a very obvious advantage in terms of reducing environmental external externalities to improve air quality and reduce and for decarbonization purposes. So I hope that can briefly answer your questions, but we can of course continue this discussion offline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wenxing. Yeah, now the chat is becoming more dynamic, and so we are receiving more questions. Let me check first. I mean, Michelle, Carlos, is the question about biofuels clarified? Do you want to weigh in on this? Or Carlos was one of the peer reviewers of the report, so he was clarifying about the that biofuels were not considered in the specific country analysis. But I don't know if this is solve, Michelle, from your end? Or do you want to?
No, sure, I understand that's another whole world, right? But I just mentioned it because in the case of Brazil specifically, biofuels is really, really important. Not just this generation of biofuels, but the next generation of biofuels. And now the work that the Brazilian government and the certification, the RenovaBio certification that's moved by the regulators have been done to actually avoid a land problem and improve sustainability. So yeah, that's what came to my mind, especially if you're comparing cost and also the complementarity about both, right? Because of both the SAF, for instance, they are using hydrogen with bio. Yeah, that's the things that came to mind. But I completely understand that it's another kind of context and simulation.
Great, fantastic. So actually, Wenxin, yeah, there are. You can I allow you also to read the questions in the chat. But there's one thing I also had in mind to check is the country's selection. Actually, it's interestingly, I mean, in World Bank operations involving hydrogen, we have already in Brazil, in Chile, and in India, both supporting policies or operations involving infrastructure and demonstration is great. So I think that's key. You mentioned at the end, one of the recommendations is the integration of green hydrogen projects and pilots. And in many of these countries, they combine the excellent resources, ability to consume domestically, exports, and also and there's a question down the road also from the distances and transport of hydrogen from the places where it can be produced and until the demand centers. So this ability to find initial hydrogen values, it's something that you can combine the demand of hydrogen for all the industrial uses. And so I think this is something that not just for using the hydrogen as for the mobility sector, but also for other industrial uses with higher demand, maybe can help a lot to try to smooth this transition. But so that's why I just wanted to jump in, because I think that's something that we are working in the with Dolph. I mean, is leading all these in the H4D and the hydrogen team at SMAP with Michelle and others. But I don't know if Wenxin, you are following the questions. There are more questions about the market development, if these recommendations apply to other parts of the world. And I mean, Hisham is signaling this concern about the pipeline network that's moving the hydrogen or maybe other fuels that can be transported easier, like ammonia. And there are also specific questions again about the cost of clean hydrogen as a fuel. So from CD Mohammed and cost of battery vehicles and so on. How do you like to respond? Maybe in a way.
Thank you, Rafael. I have been trying to follow the question, but there are a lot of them, and they're very rich, very good questions that I just don't know which one. But I really want to respond to Alejandro's question here, because it has some relevancy, a very relevant point here that I did not have a chance to explain in the presentation. So I want to use this opportunity. Thank you, Alejandro, and hi for your question. I think his question is more on the. I did talk about trying to avoid artificially bridge the investment, the gap between the FCEV with BEV and the ICE in terms of bringing the upfront cost down. And I know he's from IFC, so he has some investment questions on that. Yes, I agree that seed investment to help bring down the cost of either the hydrogen fuel or the hydrogen vehicle will help the economy to evolve and for the price job to booster the scale of economy, and that's quite right. So I want to bring in one research finding that we had for the e-mobility report. So in the earlier report, when we compare electric BEV vehicles with the diesel vehicles, we had this analysis research, this research completed for 13 countries that we want to see if the subsidies goes directly towards a vehicle purchase to incentivize people to buy electric vehicle against if the same subsidy goes to the install more charging infrastructures to incentivize people to buy, which one is more effective. So we have simulated this the scenario, and based on the simulation in 30 countries that they are currently promoting the electric vehicle, we find that the subsidies goes towards charging infrastructures, same amount, will be up to 5 to 6 times more effective comparing with the same subsidy going directly into the vehicle purchase. Because if you have a more mature charging infrastructure, people will reduce their range anxiety, and they know that when their car is out of power, out of range, they can always find a charger to charge it. And then that will actually incentivize more for their purchase toward electric car. So if you're interested, please you can find that finding in our e-mobility report. And for this report, we want to say that South Korea is a country that they have heavily subsidized their vehicle fleet for the hydrogen transition. That's why they have significantly helped to bring down the fuel cell electric buses in this country due to the heavy subsidies, because they want to boost this economy, which is quite successful. But the country scenario might be a little bit different because our context here is more on the lower to middle income countries for the developing countries. And the heavy subsidies will cause a great burden for the government, for the public sector to invest. And so that's why we're trying to avoid the recommending large subsidy going directly into bridging the vehicle capital cost, because we all know that battery vehicles and the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is much more expensive compared with a diesel bus. It could be up to 4 times more expensive. And if you just artificially put an investment directly to bridge that vehicle capital cost down, it might not be financially sustainable. And at the same time, for most countries, because most countries have tax receipt on their fossil fuels, and most countries will subsidize their electricity powers. So the transition to zero emission to these zero emission vehicles might already be bringing a physical consequences to these countries' physical, and they might already be considering for a reform to adapt to this transition. So additional subsidies might be a bigger burden, but that's why we're recommending not directly subsidizing to bridge the vehicle capital cost, but carbon tax, exactly like Alessandro typed in the question. Carbon tax could be a very effective instrument to consider, because these zero emission vehicles do bring huge environmental benefit, and they do have a unique niche in this area that can benefit from the carbon tax policies to help them to evolve and help them to further bring down the vehicle cost price. And that's probably what Tesla has been doing. But yeah, but let me stop there for that. And thank you for this question, and thank you for this opportunity to let me elaborate on that point. Rafael, I will be counting on you to help me to figure out what will be the next more burning question here.
We have a few of questions coming. I think you have answered some of them. There are a couple of specific questions. One is from our dear colleague Miko, from a very active partner in the H4D, and he's asking about do you see that your opinion about the policy proposed by the Chongqing municipality? I don't know if you have any information or reactions about it.
First, I don't know about this price strategy. It might be more recent, because $3 per kilogram will be really, really high, and it's almost a half of the lowest market price now. I know in China they have this strategy strategy on the promoting the hydrogen economy in some areas, apparently Chongqing and also in Shandong province. And the hydrogen fuel cell buses sales price in China has been quite reasonable. And they have the demonstration project, and also the fleet is successful. But I'm not in a position to comment about this strategy. First, I don't know about this strategy.
Let's see if Miko is online, so he can maybe brief us a little bit about this.
Yeah, but I want to say that bringing down the green hydrogen fuel cost will be one key element to boost this fuel cell electric vehicles for their adoption and uptake for sure.
Okay, excellent. He has quickly replied about has been adopted. Maybe we can also exchange information offline about these initiatives and so on. That's great. And then also, I think I read another maybe quite a specific consideration. If you have looked into the scenarios with such a detail, like concentrating on heavy-duty vehicles in mining and seaports. That's coming from CD Mohammed.
Unfortunately, that's not in the scope of the study, but I do recommend you to CD. I do recommend you to refer to my colleagues, my colleague Dominic. They have recently published 2 reports regarding the hydrogen use, ammonia use in the maritime sector, and they're very informative report that is also published by the World Bank. You will find it useful to answer your question in that sector.
Very good. Let me ask this behind the audience a bit if I missed some of the specific questions or through Wenxin's answers. Some of them are still pending.
I see there's one question asking what is the justification for the country selection, the 5 countries. So basic, this is not based on market readiness. We select these countries because there is already hydrogen production or strategy plans announced in these countries, and we find it relevant through the communication with our region colleagues from these countries. There's a need. So similar to our electric mobility studies, this is based on we have let me also use this opportunity to advertise our upcoming report. We have a second electric mobility global report coming up later this year, that we will do a comprehensive similar economic analysis over 40 countries in the world, mostly developing countries, and the country selection is based on the region teams.
That makes a lot of sense, Wenxin. Actually, in my quick intervention, I was also signaling that the energy team, the hydrogen team at SMAP is supporting regional colleagues now in all these operations in Brazil, in India, and Chile. I think they are super active countries and makes a lot of sense. And well, this may be another opportunity to keep thinking about strengthening the integration or cooperation between the transport and energy teams, and how to look for best opportunities to some kind of, if possible, some kind of low-hanging fruits and early market opportunities. So that's great. I think let allow CD Mohammed raise the hand. So yeah, please.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you so much, Wenxin, for your presentation. Actually, I would just clarify my question. You give some comparison about the cost of clean hydrogen as a fuel, but the cost of the hydrogen is not the same everywhere in the world. I'm from Britannia, and we are expected to have some of the lowest cost for green hydrogen in the world, if we don't take into account the transportation costs. At least the production cost locally is very advanced. So what is the price that you used in your comparison? Because I guess the price must be very different from one place to another. That was one question. My second question was when you compare fuel cell electric vehicle with BEV, is it at the cost of today, or we can do the comparison if in a scenario where mass production is used for both cases? I think that it makes some difference. My last question, I guess I think that you answered on it. It's about the use of a heavy-duty vehicle using fuel cells or battery in mining sites, just for to transport the ore to do the local operation. It's about transportation, not about mine works. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wenxin, just to note, I mean, let me quickly check if there is someone else with a question, because we would have I think 5 more minutes for answering questions, and then Michelle would do the closing remarks. Thank you so much. But, I mean, if we don't have any more questions at this point, you can expand on your responses. Thank you so much.
Okay. I can let me quickly answer CD's question. The first one is regarding the hydrogen cost. The hydrogen cost that we use in the projection varies by country. Each country have different costs of hydrogen, both in production and in the final pump price. And in the pump price, we do including the transportation of the hydrogen either through pipe or through trucking. So in this report, I would highly recommend our report. So we have a dedicated chapter that we explain how we calculate the hydrogen production and the cost estimation, and in each country and by cost component, including the capex, the depreciation, the operating cost, the electricity, natural gas, coal cost, and also the cost of capital. The cost has been in detail decomposed, and we have explained how we calculated this levelized cost of hydrogen, both for the blue hydrogen, blue and gray hydrogen. Even gray hydrogen is also included, and in the green hydrogen, and we that where did we reference to the country specific data. So I don't want to spend more time to discuss the technical details, but it's all written in the report in this dedicated chapter. But the hydrogen cost varies by country, and the pump price includes the transporting cost. So the second question is regarding the price. We use the projected vehicle price by year 2030 for the economic cost advantage analysis to compare at the year 2030, and the price will keep dropping. And the dropping of the price implies that there is a big mass production, the technology advancement, and also the scale of economy, which bring down the cost of the electric vehicle and the fuel cell vehicles. And we compare the price at 2030. But through the TCO analysis from the user perspective, we use the current market price for the vehicle cost of TCO calculation. That's to answer that part. For the mining and maritime, for the heavy duty trucks to transport, that this is not covered within our study scope, but it does. We based on our study, we would recommend consideration in this shipping heavy duty truck to ship for the mining and the shipping sector, because this is most likely the sector that will require long operating time, minimum downtime, which is fits the operational advantage from the FCEVs. With that, if there's no more question, over to Michelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a great discussion. We don't have much time, so I just want to bring here, I guess, 2 or 3 provocative thoughts for us to think after all the discussion and the great explanation. I think one of the thoughts that comes when I hear discussion and read the document. It's about this trade-off between scale and niche, right? So in the report, it's really clear that to increase to the cost to become lower, to increase the efficiency and the effectiveness of both cars and fuels, we need to have a bigger scale. That's one of the key elements, right? On the other hand, when you look about the possibilities of project implementation at this point, it's mostly considering niche markets, right? That's, I guess, one of when you think about how we can start to develop the clean hydrogen industry, we are on transportation and other uses as well. I would say ammonia, steel. We are always looking for some niche, some specific conditions. And when you talk about transport, it's really interesting that we define it really well, like the range, the long drive range, the fast refueling, the lightweight, the hilly regions. That's a really other point important. The weather itself, and all the question about the logistics of the operation. And then we define some group of demand that be more suitable, of course, considering the cost and etc. But that's a group. Another part that's important for this niche market that was discussed here, it's also the co-benefits. So place where these co-benefits are more important, like the emissions, like the air pollution. So that's another point. And the other one is, of course, the cost that was also raised and discussed here. So when you think about this niche market, you usually are looking for a place where we can combine these different elements, where the benefits can actually be higher than the cost itself, and this viability gap. And then it can policies. That's the other side of it. So the place where this viability gap, or the difference between cost and the benefits are smaller, so you try to actually level of policy and incentives, or that can be on externalities, as you mentioned, or other kind of policies. And then something that was mentioned that's really important, that's it's really hard to do policy when the gap's so big. So it's general policies so difficult. We need to have policies that actually be able to move when you have more possibility, when it makes more sense in terms of this cost benefit analysis, where the viability gap is smaller. So when you think about that, actually you can find some projects that could start right now. And you're seeing, even if you don't have many offtake agreements taking place, we have small, and we start to have some offtake agreements taking place, not just on transport, not on transportation specifically, but in general on demand. And these offtake agreements even start to be taking place on developing countries, not just developed countries. So yes, this niche, the kind of niche market that exists, and we start to see them. But my thought and my question that I think it would be nice to think is that how much this is enough to promote the scale we need to actually decrease the cost in the scale, as you mentioned, that this can actually become something more sustainable and can go beyond the niche market. So that's, I guess, one of the questions, I guess, it comes to me when I read the document, that's how much it be necessary and how much we can add from niche market to niche market, on to demand to create values that give you some level of scale at the regional level or some sub-regional level, and that could actually move the technology to decrease cost. So I just want to go a little bit hearing and all the discussion and all the details, bring a little bit this thought for us to the discussion to see how this relationship of this viability gap that we see, the specific condition niche on transport and in other parts of hydrogen demand. And the question is how much we need from that and how we can promote it, and how policy and our own interventions in the bank and the other partners that are here can help us to increase this niche market, to achieve a scale, a number where we can actually overpass this need of specific niche market and become the technology more competitive in a higher scale. So I don't have an answer. I'm just bringing this question and these thoughts for us in this discussion. So thank you very much. It was a really good and really informative presentation, and I hope we can keep in touch, thinking and trying to see how we can actually promote, because it's really clear the need of this interaction between energy sector and energy as a whole, and the transportation. It's a big part of this potential demand. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Michelle. I still want to take this opportunity to thank for SMAP for the close collaboration. And we start this exciting collaboration on this energy transition sector, both energy and transport. And with Ambassador Tariq, I look forward to work with Tariq on the electric mobility agenda as well in the very next phase. And we appreciate the support from SMAP. And I hope we keep in this collaboration and communication. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you so much. I think we can close with this. And I think we will ask Dolph to invite you to one of these our weekly meetings in the hydrogen team meetings. It would be great to have you there and exchange more ideas.
Dolph is our mentor in this hydrogen agenda. It's in the transport sector. It's very informative and helpful.
Have an excellent day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ignacio, for the coordination. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
It's my pleasure.
Bye, Rafael.
Thank you very
Bye,
much,
Michelle.
Nacho.